Hi, I'm Shweta Vasan. Come join me as I speak to Mr. Gareth Longstaff about the portrayal of LGBT community by media.
I'm a gay man. I've lived my life as a gay man, all of my life, I guess. But for at least half of my life, I came out when I was 19. I'm 40 now. So for 21 years, I've lived within really kind of major UK cities, Newcastle, London, and I've very much embraced this kind of gay community, if you will, whether that be through activism, whether that be through social events, whether that be through events which connect more broadly to kind of creativity, my own interests, reading groups, art exhibitions, theatre, drama, all of that, right? So my own connection is a personal one. I've been fortunate enough, and in some ways, I guess, kind of strategic enough, to also carve out a career for myself whereby my academic research also feeds into that personal identity that I have. I think there's an illusion that, particularly in the West, particularly in the UK, the USA, not all of Europe, but certain countries in Europe, that, you know, we've got it all. That gay people have it all, that there is this incredibly open and inclusive environment of gay rugby teams, drag queens, gay people on television, gay people everywhere in the media, gay pop stars, all of that. Yeah, okay, you can't deny that. And again, that level of visibility has done a huge amount to further the gay cause. So I can walk down the street and feel, which I probably wouldn't have felt 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, feel very comfortable in my own skin. You know, but I do still struggle, and whether this is an intergenerational thing or a generational thing, I do still struggle, you know, just freely holding my partner's hand in the street, or kissing my partner, or finding myself in a taxi, or having my hair cut and saying, oh yeah, he, rather than she, right? So that can often be tricky. There's still a lot of negotiation to do, I think. So when I say that gay identity, and again, I'm speaking as a minority within a minority, as a gay man, a white gay man. So I'm simultaneously in a very privileged position, but then in a minoritized position as well. I still think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think it's problematic. We live in an age of mediation and self-representation and you know, kind of the virtual, if you like. That's not real. You know, social media, Instagram, Facebook are not real spaces. Yes, they document the real, that which has happened to us, but alongside of that, they also kind of filter it. And I think there's a danger to think that just because, you know, my Facebook profile or my Instagram platform looks as if I live this perfect gay lifestyle, it's not always the case, you know. So I think there's an awful lot of hate crime. I think there's a huge rise of, particularly in the UK in the light of Brexit, a more far-right politics, which alongside of the left is kind of doing that, you know. So there's a lot of work still to be done. Trans and trans identity, transgendered identity particularly, has become this kind of, this hot potato, this perfect storm at the moment. It's everywhere, yeah? And that's caused from within the gay community or the queer community lots of internal differences. So there are terms like TERF, which is TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist. So this idea that if I were a radical lesbian feminist, I, from within, level a kind of politics of phobia or discrimination against a trans person who's going through, for instance, a male to female journey. It's really complicated. If you look at something like a rugby team, right, and then you look at something like a drag queen, and you add a trans person into that mix, it makes it complicated again. Because it's like, right, where does this trans person fit in the rugby team? And there's a whole politics to do with drag and trans, because trans and drag are not the same thing, but they're often conflated in media as the same thing. A lot of trans people have real issues with, like, RuPaul's Drag Race because they see it as misogynistic towards women and towards trans. So, yeah, I mean, if LGBTQ plus life gives you anything, it's never boring. If you fill in a form for a passport or you fill in a job application form, you can only be male and female at the moment, yeah? There needs to be changes there if we're going to think. Trans are a minority, they're a very small minority. But alongside of that, where there need to be changes more broadly for that minority to then live their lives as they should. If you look at suicide rates, if you look at mental health rates amongst the trans community, they're huge. And again, that's not fair. No community should ever have to go through that, whether that's gendered, sexualised, class-based, religious, race-based, whatever. Toilets, for example, gender-neutral toilets, or toilets which co-opt gender-neutral people with disabled people. Other things like how I might address you. So if you are going through a transition and you're a male and you're choosing to change your gender through hormones and various operative processes to a female, what do I call you in that transitional period? Is it he, is it she, is it they, is it them? And people are really struggling with that. I think people need to be, on that, more open and honest and less embarrassed about just kind of, calling someone out or asking someone, well, what shall I call you? Like I've got lots of trans friends and they're like, I just want to be asked. Gay men who might play rugby or gay men who might play football, also, enjoying a drag queen or themselves being drag queens. That adds a real level of complexity as to how we see ourselves and how we see identity construction. I think LGBTQ plus people call into question the kind of the essence or the assumed nature of, this person's a boy, so they have to behave in that way. Or this person's straight, so they have to behave in that way. Of course they don't. It's a cultural construction. And I think queer LGBTQ++++ has always had a knack or a way of bringing that to a broader cultural, societal level of visibility and attention.